What it did, y'all. Let's get right into it. Because I need to kind of correct myself a little bit from a previous video of mine, where before the league I said I didn't think the melee buffs were going to be all that. Yeah, I've never been so wrong in my life. And I could have said this after my league started when I played Melee Ignite, but I think I could have written that off as just, oh, well, you played Ignite era. Like, I get that. So, I kind of just waited to see how all the slam characters came out from other people playing those characters, as well as looking at the POBs from them, because the POBs looked absolutely phenomenal. But I can now say without a shadow of a doubt that this patch was fantastic for slams. It was fantastic for all of Melee, really. But I want to talk about slams in particular in this video, because it was pointed out to me by my friend Mitch that I kind of shaded slams a little bit by not giving them enough credit in my diversity video. And so instead, I'm going to give them a full spotlight as far as why they're so good now, because it's everything that we ever wanted, right? We being people who care about Melee, right? If you don't give a fuck about Melee, I understand. But also, why did you click a slams video if you don't give a fuck about Melee, right? But now it has the numbers, it has the play style, there's a good number of skills within the archetype that all feel like they could be viable, and you really are just picking, either the best one of those or the one that you prefer the most. It's finally a real archetype that appeals to a larger band of people than just old MMO players, for example, right? Now, before we get into it, the deal, support the video, like, comment, subscribe. It helps out a lot. It gets the video out there. Also, shout out to y'all for really running it up on the channel. The growth has been insane. Thank you guys so much for all this. Let's get into it. Now, we have to talk numbers first, which is always my favorite part. I love the numbers, and I think the numbers are the thing that really do it the most, in multiple ways. Numbers, I feel like I've talked about this before, but just to iterate this point again, in case, you've never heard me say it before, you need numbers for a variety of reasons. Sometimes you can have too much damage, right? If you've seen any of my Sanctum content, I've talked about it a little bit, that the idea that you don't need 150, 250, 350 million DPS to do Sanctum. Some people just like chasing bigger number. But chasing bigger number and getting it big enough also means that you can move your resources elsewhere. That's why you see these Hexblast characters that absolutely dominate in T17s even, just because their damage numbers are already so high that they can't afford to lob everything else in their budget towards their defensiveness and their speed, right? Or, I prefer things like investing in cast speed on my Hexblaster for this reason. Now that slams have real numbers, it's starting to free up a lot of the pressure elsewhere. And how did they get those numbers, you ask? We have to start with overexertion support. This is a new support added this patch that gives a really tiny amount of more damage, naturally speaking, but there's a scaling more multiplier for each Warcry that's exerting this skill. It's worth noting, due to the wording of this, it's not 18%, 18%, 18% multiplicatively at level 20. It is just, if you have 4 Warcries, that is 72% more. Instead of, multiplying that on top of each other to get something really ridiculous. But let me not make that sound like that's still not ridiculous. Up on the screen, you'll see the math for some quick napkin math on just how ridiculous this gets. And I really want to call your attention to 4, 5, and 6, because 4 is a pretty normal number of Warcries. You could even realistically just automate all 4 of those if you really wanted to. And you still get an 89% damage support. 89%. I want to remind you that Trinity's 50-ish is considered absurd, right? Woke support gems will get in the ballpark of 60-ish. 89%, we are at a archetype defining level already. And then 5 at 109, but most importantly, 6 at 128.8% is unheard of. Well, not unheard of, but for Melee, it's pretty unheard of. For comparisons purposes, I will pop up on the screen as well the numbers for barrage support and minefield support. 2 other meta-definingly broken supports that exist in the game that I have covered previously in videos of this type, where I talk about the fact that barrage support's 117% damage bonus or minefield's 150% damage bonus really contribute to why those archetypes are so strong. in addition to any other mechanical advantages they might have over the competitors, whatever those may be, the raw number of damage gained from putting this support on your character is so high that you just get all sorts of luxury as a result. Overexertion now provides that to slams. And you would think that slams already had this, but, and you're probably thinking of Fist of War, right? You're like, didn't Fist of War already do something ridiculous? 98% more damage. And you're right, except for the part where that has a time penalty on it. You can only get that benefit every 1.8 seconds, right? Like if you're not slowing your attack speed down to be basically once every other second, you're not actually utilizing Fist of War all the time. And therefore you're not actually getting that ridiculous 98. Like I saw a lot of POBs that were more land in the like 35% range. Or even when I looked at some of the POBs from before the league and after the league, Fist of War in those POBs only really comes out to about like 32% on the high end, 26 on some of them, 22% on one of them, right? Because of the uptime requirement. Where all you need for overexertion is to have it be exerted. And so that's the beauty of it. You can then stack this on top with the unique Echoes of Creation, which that's not new to this league, but it's definitely one of the first. It's having a resurgence as a result of slams being back, because this is a slams unique, with the very important line here being, percent more damage per Warcry exerting the skill, which at 6 Warcries of the max roll, that's 90% more damage out of your helmet. We run Abyssus for less. I'm just saying, we run Abyssus for less. So this is fantastic as well. It also hurts you like Abyssus, but I would argue that this is a lot more reasonable hurt than what Abyssus can put on you, right? And that's kind of the thing. We now have these insane damage multipliers that are really stacking on top of each other in addition to normal stuff. And it doesn't even stop there yet, because let's not forget how ridiculous Warcries are, right? I'm going to just pop them up on the screen, and I want to highlight a couple really important ones in this list. The fact that Intimidating Cry functions perfectly in terms of damage from automation support is fantastic. Would you want 30% MS? I mean, sure, but you have to press the button to get that. But you can just have automated double damage. If I told you could reserve 15% of your mana to double your damage, you would do it in a heartbeat. Ta-da! Intimidating Cry. That was the wrong way. Deal with it. that is double damage for 15% of your mana. Thanks to auto exertion support. Battle Mage's Cry. The base crit buff is nice, but if you don't need that because you're either, your PT/RT, or maybe you just have enough crit anyways. Maybe you just got it like that. Instead of going that route, you could just auto exert this and have it trigger spells when you attack, which is what you're seeing a lot of characters do with something like Vulnerability, to apply their curse on hit without needing to give up a ring slot, without needing to cast it themselves, without it taking up other gem sockets, such as like adding in like Hex Touch or something, or forcing you into a mark on hit setup or a cast when damage taken setup. And again, it counts as an exerted skill for overexertion and Echoes of Creation. The rest of these are absolutely insane anyways, but these are the two that I really wanted to highlight because of how much damage they actually can add to your character, especially in day-to-day gameplay, map by map, right? That's what's making this so strong. Your access to your numbers are no longer locked behind totems and having to press 4 to 6 Warcries individually every time, right? And that gets me into the playstyle piece. First off, we can all celebrate the death of totems being nuked, and instead the skills getting what effectively came out to be basically double damage across the board in compensation for losing the large amount of damage that totems gave was massive for slams, because slams did not give a rat's ass about the attack speed. Maybe a little bit for comfort purposes, but like it didn't actually do much for your damage, because your damage is, big, beefy hits, which you no longer have to think about that. So totems out, big damage numbers in. We love that. Automating your Warcries really helps out with, streamlining the gameplay. Like I mentioned earlier, having Intimidating Cry just give you double damage basically every time you slam. A Battle Mage's Cry, applying your vulnerability on hit to pretty much every target you've ever hit. That's fantastic, right? Like these things are, and in this note, there's also Infernal Cry, which gives you combust, which is just like little pops on enemies. That's a fist to fire converted explosion. That actually does a little bit of damage in clear. Fantastic, right? We love pops in our clear. Even if it wasn't insane, it just is sexy to look at. Ain't that right? So the war cries themselves, not only are they strong, but they automate your gameplay or automate a part of it or all of it in some cases with like the Tripolar Bear and Rue's original setup that then Tripolar Bear really started to iterate on and do a little bit of stuff with, using Eternal Apple to trigger a bunch of them, as well as then still triggering other war cries off of auto exertion to completely take the piano playstyle out of the build, right? Like that's also an option. The playstyle has improved so much. The big hits are honestly satisfying as hell. Like watching slam characters do their thing again, it's so beautiful. Just click button, screen goes boom, and then they move on. And you don't have to be chronically slow. You can still scale attack speed if you want to like get around faster. And I think one personal plus of all this playstyle changes for me is that you do still have the option to go back to the piano playstyle should you desire. If you're sitting there thinking that you really want to like milk out every piece of damage and really go all the way to the top, maybe you're looking for a Giga Boss leader and you want to see if you can do it on a slam character, you can unauto exert your skills and instead just piano the war cries yourself. And they'll do even more damage, right? Which these two things together come together. These two things being playstyle and the numbers come together in an experience where you now have so much damage that you have options and avenues, right? You no longer have to scale crit to make your slam character do damage because you have Warcry scaling now, as well as the other stuff that you want it to scale. You could do aura scaling still. You can do funny ways to trigger your war cries. You can do all of these things, make these concessions. You can even do stuff like run blood magic and run no exertions, but then run like a single aura, right? These characters have been so beefy from what I've seen. I'm seeing characters well above 6,500 life, especially with the new life rolls. The defense buffs there really help. You're seeing the tankiness come through that melee characters need, not just because of buffs to the defenses that we got this league, but because the numbers are so high now that you have room to fit your defenses in. All in all, a playstyle that I'm really looking forward to trying at some point this league. I don't know when or how, because, it doesn't exactly make sense for me in terms of like trade blasting, because I don't love the way it scales with money. It just looks like a lot better of a setup for, messing around in SSF or something. It's a very nice, fresh character to play. It's very sustainable. And to that end, I wanted to talk about like the skills and ascendancies, right? Because we've seen a couple of them already really pop off this league. The big one being Ground Slam of Earth Breaking from before the league. And then there's been a number of characters that transitioned into either Earth Shatter or Volcanic Fissure of Snaking, or maybe back and forth between various skills, depending on how you wanted to play, right? Volcanic Fissure of Snaking is what Lance ended up going to, or you go between Ground Slam and Earth Shatter depending on mapping versus pure bossing. Sunder, I've heard, is pretty good. I'm really hoping, fingers crossed, that like Tech Slam makes a return. I don't think it'll be this league, unfortunately, because, Volcanic Fissure is just kind of Tech Slam, but better. Maybe Ice Crash, somebody figures out something cool with that. Could even end up with a cool thing with Earthquake, potentially. Maybe somebody goes crazy with Conk Path. I doubt that one, but you never know, right? There's a lot of skills within this archetype to play around with and give you, have opportunities to play around with, as well as I find the playstyle to be very viable on multiple ascendancies. I will say Berserker is like pound for pound numerically probably the best, but I think you would still have adequate damage on Jug. I've seen fantastic slam Jugs this league. If you wanted to do it on a Slayer, I would ask you why you didn't just play LS instead, but hey, look, go off, right? The options are pretty wide for the archetype. The numbers are fantastic for the archetype. The play style is no longer pure pain-inducing play, but instead a lot more comfortable, a lot more modern, quite frankly, as it pertains to how a lot of our other builds feel once they get things rolling. It just felt like with Warcries and Slams together, you could really never like hands-off gameplay. It always felt like it took a little bit more out of you. And again, Nothing wrong with still wanting that. You have the option to just not auto exert your war cries because that's a support gem, right? Anyways, that's all I wanted to like bring up to you. I wanted to make sure that Slam players felt represented in the understanding of just how good they're doing this league, because Slam's got it good this league, y'all. I don't think it's gonna get like taken down a notch or anything, but I will say if you've looked at Slams in the past, like I have, I was pretty fascinated with the Slams during like the Heist League era, especially like that gauntlet where they were just Impaler, Call of Steel, deleting stuff. Like it was a very appealing idea. I just didn't like the button bloat. If you didn't like the button bloat, this might be the time for you to finally check out Slams. Anyways, that's everything from me. Thank you guys for watching. Support the video. Again, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Get the message out there. If you want to see me, yapping more, I have a Discord that I'm active in. I also have a Twitch in the description. You can come see me yap there when I'm live in the evenings. Not every evening, but enough evenings to make it worth your while to come check it out. Anyways, I'm out. Have a good one, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.